He built a house in which the whole world can live. So this is first kirtan or outdoor kirtan in Tompkins Square Park in the Bhagavatam from the kids and the young disciples. He knew this was the desire of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his own spiritual master. Even though caste-conscious Brahmanas in India would disapprove of his associating with such untouchables as these drug-mad American meat-eaters and their good friends. But Swamiji explained that he was in full accord with the scriptures. The Bhagavatam had clearly stated that Krishna consciousness should be delivered to all races. Everyone was a spiritual soul, and regardless of birth, would be brought to the highest spiritual platform by chanting the holy name. Never mind whatever sinful things they were doing, these people were perfect candidates for Krishna consciousness. Tompkins Square Park was Krishna's plan. It was also part of the earth, and these people were members of the human race. And the chanting of Hare Krishna was the Dharma for the age. Is the one where you see Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Prayana
Veda Tadidam Mahajano Yam
Prayena Veda Tadidam Mahajano Yam.
Prayena Veda Tadidam Mahajano Yam. Prayena Veda Tadidam Mahajano Yam. Devya Vimohita Mati Bhatta Mayayalam. Devya Vimohita Matir Bhatta Mayayalam. Devya Vimohita Matir Bhatta Mayayalam. Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam
Rayam Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam
Arayam Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam
Rayam Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam
Rayam Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam Vaitanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana Vaitanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana Vaitanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana Rayena Veda Tadidam Namahajanoyam Devya Vimohitamatir Vatamayalam
Rayam Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam
Rayam Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam Vaitanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana Rayena Veda Tadidam Namahajanoyam Devya Vimohitamatir Vatamayalam Rayam Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam Vaitanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana Rayena Veda Tadidam Namahajanoyam Devya Vimohitamatir Vatamayalam Rayam Jati Kritamatir Madhu Pushpitayam Vetanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana
Rayena Veda Tadidam Namahajanoya
Rayena Veda Tadidam Namahajanoyam
Devya Vimohitamatir Vatamayalam
Devya Vimohitamatir Vatamayalam
Trayam Jadi Kritamatir Madhu Pushpitayam
Rayam Jati Kritamatir Madhu Pushpitayam
Vaitanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana
Vetanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana Rayena Veda Tadidam Namahajanoyam Devya Vimohitamatir Vatamayalam Trayam Jadi Kritamatir Madhu Pushpitayam Vetanike Mahati Karmani Yujyamana Rayena Veda Tadidam Namahajanoyam Devya Vimohitamatir Vatamayalam Rayam Jadi Kritamatir Madhu Pushpitayam Vaitanike mahati karmani yujyamana Prayana almost always Veda no Tat that Ina is Na No Mahajana
Great personalities besides Swayambhu, Shambhu, and the other 10.
Great personalities besides Swayambhu, Shambhu and the other 10. I am this. Devya by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vimohitamati, whose intelligence is bewildered. Bhatta, indeed. Maya,
By the illusory energy.
by the illusory energy.
Alam,
Alam,
greatly.
greatly.
Vayam, in the three Vedas.
Jadi
Kritamati,
Kritamati,
whose intelligence has been dulled.
whose intelligence has been dulled.
Madhu Pushpitaya,
Madhu Pushpitayam,
in the flowery Vedic language describing the results of ritualistic performances.
in the flowery Vedic language describing the results of ritualistic performances. Vedanike,
In the performances mentioned in the Vedas.
the performances mentioned in the Vedas.
Mahati,
Mahati,
very great.
very great.
Karmani,
Karmani,
fruitive activities.
fruitive activities.
Yujyamana,
Yujyamana,
being engaged.
being engaged.
Translation of purport by 59 words. Peace be Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Because they are bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yajnavalkya and Jaimini and other compilers of the religious scriptures cannot know the secret, confidential religious system of the 12 Mahajanas. They cannot understand the transcendental value of performing devotional service or chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Because their minds are attracted to the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas, especially the Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Rigveda, their intelligence has become dull. Thus, they are busy connecting the ingredients for ritualistic ceremonies that yield only temporary benefits, such as elevation to Swargaloka or material happiness. They are not attracted to the Sankirtan movement. Instead, they are interested in Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Report. Since one may easily achieve the highest success by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one may ask why there are so many very ritualistic ceremonies and why people are attracted to them. This verse answers that question. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vidasya Sarvar Aham Eva Vidya. The real purpose of studying the Vedas is to approach the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Unfortunately, unintelligent people, bewildered by that grandeur of Vedic yajnas, want to see gorgeous sacrifices performed. They want Vedic mantras chanted and huge amounts of money spent for such ceremonies. Sometimes we have to observe the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies to please such an intelligent mind. Recently, when we established a large Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, we were obliged to have Vedic ceremonies enacted by Brahmins because the inhabitants of Vrindavan, especially the smarter Brahmins, would not accept Europeans and Americans as bona fide Brahmins. Thus, we had to engage Brahmanas to perform costly yajnas. In spite of these yajnas, the members of our society performed Sankirtan loudly in numbers, and I consider the Sankirtan more important than the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Both the ceremonies and the Sankirtan were going on simultaneously. The ceremonies were meant for persons interested in Vedic rituals for elevation to heavenly planets. Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam, whereas the Sankirtan was meant for pure devotees interested in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We will simply have performed Sankirtan, but The inhabitants of Vrindavan would not have taken the installation ceremony seriously. As explained here, the Vedic performances are meant for those whose intelligence has been dulled by the flowery language of the Vedas, which describe fruitive activities intended to elevate one to the higher planets. Especially in this age of Kali, Sankirtan alone is sufficient. If the members of our temples in the different parts of the world simply continue Sankirtan before the deity, especially before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they will remain perfect. There is no need of any other performances. Nevertheless, to keep oneself clean in habits and mind, daily worship and other regulative principles are required. Srila Jiva Goswami says that although Sankirtan is sufficient for the perfection of life, the archana or worship of the deity in the temple must continue in order that the devotees may stay clean and pure. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur therefore recommended that one follow both processes simultaneously. We strictly follow this principle of performing deity worship and Sankirtan along parallel lines. This we should continue. ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा तथामयं तदाति स्वातमान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीभगवत्पादकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपां सर्वजातं सहगना रघुनाथं तत्सजीवं सद्गुणं सर्वजितं पुरुषनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीलता कृष्णपदां सहगना वन्दितां श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणसिन्धु दीनबन्धुविजयपते गोपीश गोपिकान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोऽस्तुते तत्र कञ्चना गौरङ्गी विरजे वृन्दवनेश्वरी जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Because they are bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yajnavalkya and Jainini and other compilers of the religious scriptures cannot know the secret, confidential religious system of the 12 Mahajans. They cannot understand the transcendental value of performing devotional service or chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, because their minds are attracted to the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas, especially the Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Rigveda. Their intelligence has become dull. Thus, they are busy collecting the ingredients for ritualistic ceremonies that yield only temporary benefits, such as elevation to Swargaloka or material happiness. They are not attracted to the Sankirtan movement. Instead, they are interested in Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. This process of devotional service is considered descending. It's not ascending. Ascending process is the modern way of experiment, exploring, uh, finding some sort of hypothesis, put it in methodology, and then performing the experiment to prove the hypothesis. And in that way, if it gets proved, then it's considered to be now learned something more about the reality of this material world. And if you look historically, those various ideas, this keeps changing at one point, one thing gets proved, and a few years later, somebody else comes up and disproves this original point and finds something else, and it just keeps changing and changing and changing. Because, for example, a simple thing that when I was growing up, um, and Lithuania became independent from Soviet Union, then around that time, the margarine has become accepted as a best replacement for butter because butter became like really bad for you. Suddenly, through scientific discovery, it was proved that it increases the cholesterol, and therefore, the blood is struggling to go to your veins, and you can get a heart attack. So the butter, we started to mix with all sorts of things, the butter, and we started to see in the market. I can't believe it's not butter brands and stuff like that. So margarine has replaced and the butter was like more and more went into the background. However, just recently, after a couple of decades of taking with the margarine, it has been again reestablished that butter is really good for you. And it's actually, it doesn't increase cholesterol and it doesn't increase the heart attack. So this is just one example of thing that gets established and later, a decade later, or a couple of decades later, gets again disproved. So how many things are there? Like the things that we have been studying at school, college, university, is presented as a almost like an ultimate reality. People give these big lectures and etc. on those points, and then soon later, after that, it gets again disproved. So this is ascending knowledge. Is constantly changing. One thing gets proved, another gets disproved, and some other more intelligent person comes and establishes another fact, and then another person comes and establishes the original thing. So it's constantly flickering and changing. And why there is a limitation in this point? Because there is a limitation in our perception. How many times we see something happening in our life and we may get like really upset or we may get very happy. Oh wow, this is wonderful, and we give some interpretation of what is going on. But later on there is some other facts come up and we realize it's not so bad or it's not so good. So our perception is limited, our sense is limited, our intelligence is limited, our ability to understand the situations is limited, and all the senses, whether it's eyes or tongue, or hearing, all senses that we have, there's a limitation there. It cannot give us perfect knowledge, as we can see. No matter the most intelligent people in the world make various types of mistakes. We can see it all the time. The leaders of the world make mistakes, no matter how many PhDs you have. Sometimes it can be even more prone to make a mistake because you become very puffed up and proud. Then there's a tendency of oversee some small details and neglect things, and therefore there is more tendency to make mistakes. So this is the ascending process of knowledge. And also people who are on this ascending process of knowledge, there is also tendency to uh, go for something quick and cheap. Because with the limited senses, what happens is that you come to realization that you are this body. Because that all that we can see with our eyes and our limited ability to perceive things, we can start accepting, and that's what we see in a mirror from our child. There's a body, there's a body there, and we look in the mirror, and we start identifying that this is actually me. And therefore, if this is me, whatever I can, in whatever way I can gratify in this body, then that will make me happy. So this is kind of stems from and it's such a fundamental principle from that misunderstanding, from the point that you can perceive that what is going on in the world on a basis of just the sensual perception, that establishes so many other things from that initial mistake. That I am this body, and therefore the goal of life is just to gratify this body. So therefore, when people come to spiritual life, they are also thinking in the same way. How I can enhance and gratify my physical experience, or maybe emotional or mental, or at the very best, intellectual experience. This is very natural, and this is described in Bhagavad Gita that people do come to spiritual life with these kind of motivations, whether it's for some better life or some eternal development, for maybe some stress in life, and etc. And very, very rarely people come for spiritual realization, at least in the beginning stages. So that is the thing that when people come to spiritual life, they look into the scriptures, they look into the books, and they're looking for daily bread. They're looking at, if they were poor, they're looking for some daily bread, some gratification, etc. And therefore, when we read about even many, many great sages that are mentioned, Yajnavalkya, Jainini, etc., even there is so many other sages who just explain that life is just to maximize your physical gratification. I heard there is actually tradition, I cannot mention the name, but they say, it is called prosperity tradition. That you go to the place of worship and you pray for money. This is all, and they're very enthusiastic. You just give lecture. Let us get more and more money. Let us pray for more and more money. Yeah, and basically that is the whole purpose of the church. But no matter how rich we become, no matter how great we become and famous, we cannot take a penny with you into the next life. And the only thing that we are taking with us in the next life is spiritual realization. Whatever percentage of our perfection we reach in this life, we start from the very same point in the next life. Whether it's 1% or 10%. So some people are like automatically attracted by yoga principles, is described in Bhagavad Gita, because of practice in previous lives. But still, that tendency is just to use spirituality for material gratifications there. And that is the challenge, and that is the problem, that people become frustrated with material life. And they think, okay, let me look at the spiritual life, maybe they'll become happy there. They realize that all this wealth and money and fame is not making them happy, so let's look into spiritual life. But then they bring the same kind of mentality into the spiritual life, and we're looking exactly for the same thing, but in a spiritual way. That we become famous as this great spiritualist, with some honor, gain of material prosperity from this, let me gain a better shape of the body through some spiritual, physical, and yogic exercises, and then becomes just like an all-in-one. So therefore, this ascending process, it gives us just another shape of material life and material existence. Maybe it is a little bit better and a little bit more pious. But with the standard of ultimate goal of life, this is considered still illusion. Even if you become very spiritual and you are aiming for some material gain from that, is still considered complete bewilderment. And these are different aspects in the spiritual thing is dharma, so being like a very spiritual, and then to that becoming more spiritual, you become more pious, and you are able to economically fulfill yourself a bit better, and then with that economic development, you get ability to fulfill your desires, which is karma. And then when you become frustrated with fulfilling your desires, you try to achieve liberation in the sense of merging into impersonal existence of the Lord. And this is still not considered, even merging into impersonal existence of the Lord is considered an illusion because it kills the propensity of the soul to serve. When there is no more, in order to serve and have an exchange of love, it has to be two. If it becomes one, that propensity to serve and love is diminished and killed, and is no more longer there. It requires two. And the two that are eternally existent is the Lord and the living entity Jiva. Of course, there are many unlimited Jivas. And there is this loving exchange that exists from the beginning of time, or there is no such thing in the beginning of time. It's eternally existing relationship. And therefore, in order to understand that, we need not to use the material methodology to understand who we are. And when we answer the question of our identity, that defines our existence and purpose in life. And it's so important question to answer for us. And it's like almost every day. People need that microphone.
Jai.
We need to answer this question of identity every day. Who am I? And it can be a little bit misleading again, as soon as you wake up, you brushing your teeth, you combing your hair if you haven't. If you don't have any hair, it makes it easier. If you have, so you see yourself in the mirror, dressing, etc. It becomes a challenge. You immediately start identifying, I am this physical existence and there's nothing else. But the spiritual knowledge, or bona fide spiritual knowledge, will immediately give you your identity and your purpose from day one. And that is actually one of the best ways to share transcendental knowledge is to actually give the conclusion from the beginning. Because often in the ascending process of sharing the knowledge, you kind of building up, this is one premise, and there's a second premise, and a third one, and a fifth one, and that is established in this next fact, and eventually, at the very, very end, this conclusion is reached, and often that conclusion is changed a few years later. But in a Vedic system, you give the conclusion first thing. As soon as you come to the spiritual life, you get a conclusion as soon as you come to the bar, at least of the spiritual consciousness movement. And you read the first foreword of Srila Prabhupada's books, in the first paragraph, practically, you get the conclusion that you are actually not this physical body, you are the spirit soul. And it is described the function of the spiritual, what is the eternal function of the soul is to serve Krishna. So practically in the first paragraph and two, you understand who you are and what is your eternal function. But that's not finished the job at that time, of course. Then that function has to be executed in relationship with the goal. And this is what is the descending knowledge. We learn this knowledge and we try to function and act within that capacity. In the beginning, we sound theoretical, you think, how I can accept this, it may not even make sense, if you're very materially conditioned. But the way to put it is again very similar scientific methodology that you practice it. You put it to the action, you theoretically accept I am a spiritual being, and then you engage in devotional service, starting from chanting and taking prasad. And then you start experiencing the benefits and results of acting into your eternal constitutional position. And actually, that in itself is very, very powerful proof, because often in our life, when we live inauthentic life, we are living life in such a way that is not us. Often people get, because of the modern education system, often you can do things that is not really you in life. Or sometimes due to pressure, peer pressure, and etc., you try to be somebody else and you try to act in some false kind of way. And it's just something is not right, When you live an authentic life, living somebody else's values, uh, there is something not right. You're feeling emptiness, you're feeling a gap in your life. There is some dissatisfaction and lack of fulfillment. But when you start to act in the authentic way, when you find yourself and your true quality in life, this using an example, of how people feel in this material existence, when you start to live your true authentic life, you feel inspired, you feel like a big relief from being somebody else, acting in a false and real way, and it's so inspiring and satisfying. So when you start to act in your real original constitutional position, even if it may be a little bit tough and unnatural in the beginning, you start to feel enlightened, you start to feel merged, and your life becomes full of meaning, and you feel energized when you fall into that position. And therefore, we need to remind ourselves every day through the transcendental knowledge who we are, what is the purpose of life, and how to achieve that purpose, and practice and align ourselves on a daily basis to act within that capacity. And also we need to chant so that we accept and understand philosophically, and then through the spiritual practice of chanting the holy name is such a powerful principle beyond the Vedic rituals, which just can more or less kind of satisfy material desires. It actually is properly, it purifies and awakens the soul, and we can then come to the practical realization that we are not this body, we are spirit soul. So it becomes like a cycle of transcendental knowledge, samvada jnana, applying this, practicing the sadhana, and getting realization and inspiration, then to serve and to act within that capacity, and it brings us closer and closer then to that ultimate goal, Raghunatha, which is pure love for Krishna. So this chanting in itself is completely sufficient to reach that perfection. But then it is also combined, because in the beginning, due to material condition, we cannot chant so properly, although it is a perfect process that we liberate the souls by practicing this time memorial. Because of material conditioning, we are not able to practice it so well and so properly. So the four combination with the daily worship is very, very powerful and effective. Because it brings us into regulation, into the mood of goodness, we have to be clean and to take bath, and therefore it establishes these very good habits and routine in one's life, and then within that fertile ground, when you chant, and then it brings the full potency and full benefits. So before I was mentioning that we spoke of this two parallel lines of chanting and daily worship is very much recommended, and one can actually learn this art by visiting the temple, and one can get deities, and it is recommended to get Gora and Thai deities because they are the most merciful avatars of Krishna who came to spread the holy name. And therefore, by installing, and there is not required much to do. We speak about installing, so creating a space in our home for the deities, it was doing time or fiction or doing time, and then performing kirtan individually, collectively as a family, of course, as a lot nicer to chant in a group, and then if you're individually, then you chant japa, and then you do both japa and kirtan in front of the deities, and then you feel a very good spiritual progress, and very good purification in our life. And he says there is no need for any other performances. So this is such a perfect process that everything is contained in this, we can achieve a complete perfection. And of course, it's not like what other processes, but this kind of you can take to a certain stage. And like I was, for example, in a festival distributing books yesterday, and I met people who for 20, 30 years traveling to India, doing the various things, they met a few like famous personalities in India, and etc. But some of those personalities come to the, I won't mention their name, but some of them come to this kind of yet about meaning, often it's something to do with some material, art, dharma, and even moksha. And despite of so many things that are very, very nice and all the people, I'm not saying they're not nice people, but still, after all those years, smoking, drinking, there's always these four people, only one person said I am clean of this weekend, I'm not taking any drugs or alcohol. The rest of these very spiritual people who've been doing this for 10 to 30 years, we're still addicted to all sorts of bad habits. So it shows that we have to actually find the right source of information, and we can test. Even if the teachings sound absolutely amazing, we just love it, the teachings, but we have to judge by the effect it has on the people that apply those teachings. If it's one of the teachings, volumes of books, but if you find that the people still overwhelmed by bad habits, their life is not much different from the person who is not spiritual, but in the neighborhood, although they have some home sign on the door, and they have this nice dress or whatever it is to be. If the life is very similar of a neighbor who is not practicing spiritual life, that means the knowledge is missing the point. Is not descending from the higher sources, but is something materialistic and mundane, and therefore doesn't give the satisfaction of fulfillment sufficient to let the bad habits go. So we have to judge by the knowledge and the practices, by the result that it brings in the followers. Are the people doing the bad habits, like the more pure, and are we experiencing a higher taste of satisfaction and fulfillment that is kind of replacing that gap in our life that makes us very addicted into material things. So that is the test of the transcendental knowledge is bona fide. And even then, some people still are out there who are, good habits and etc. and so on, but they're not developing love of Krishna, and they're not developing pure devotion. And so then even that is limited, and it's not, it's still would go on the platform of illusion, is not transcendental unless the pure love is awakened in your heart. Are there any questions or comments on this point?
Maybe I was just wondering, just like, all of this propensity to shoot the bodies is very difficult. When we have knowledge, we still can't get beyond this body concept. But we see in the spiritual world, like Krishna, he's not different from his body. And I think it's also correct to say the associates of Krishna, they're in the spiritual bodies, there's no difference between them and their bodies. So there's like some, maybe we have some remembrance or some propensity to associate with this, our true nature, where we are not different from the body. Why? This is just my thought. Maybe you could elaborate. This is why we're so, one of the reasons we're so tightly claimed with identity.
Yes, so there's a lot of symptoms that in the field of life that points out to our eternal existence in our manifest, and that it will one that we are the soul by nature is in a different from this body in the spiritual world. So there is a tendency to identify. There is a difference between ego and false ego, false sense of existence. And there is other things like just that very search for happiness and drive for happiness from stand to the and this type of happiness is there. And so that's just people cannot often almost like even accommodate in their life the principle of death. It's like people are dying around them, etc. And it's still within your own consciousness. It's difficult. Maybe just in a funeral, you kind of start thinking what is going to happen to me, but then the next day, it's just a bit away, and that understanding. So yeah, these are because of, as you say, almost like a subtle subconscious and, realization or remembrance of our eternal condition. But because we are like thrown into the situation, even it's kind of funny actually to see it, not like funny, but it's interesting to see how, for example, people from other parts of the world come into, for example, Glasgow. So you have like, for example, Asians in Glasgow. And although they are not in Scotland, Scottish people have their kills, etc., and they speak in a certain way, etc. But because they come from Asia, they still dress in the same way, and although their accent, it becomes a bit Scottish, we will see more of a mix. We still try to bring that consciousness of a dress code. You're gonna go to the Asian spice shop, and etc. You're gonna start acting although the environment is completely different, it's still manifests in that in your Asian way, for example. So as well, the soul is engaging with the body, this kind of illusion, but the certain traits and tendencies of the soul are manifesting, but it's manifesting in a mundane, conditioned way. So therefore, this covering is there a false ego, and instead of looking into the soul and searching for the soul because we want to materially enjoy the desire that we have inside of us, it facilitates of us having a material body. So we want to basically stay in illusion because we have desire. When the desire changes and the pursuit becomes purified by chanting the holy name, then our focus shifts from external into the internal. And it takes a bit of time when we can be material motivators for a good while in Krishna consciousness and all the focus from external things. But then the purification, the focus shifts to internal to the soul, and eventually that puts me there to brings us to having a spiritual body. So we have big shifts in that. Thank you very much. Raghunatha.
Yeah. Haribol. Yes, Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu ki.